I wanted to talk about a few things. I'm going to do this live in English. I usually do them on English on YouTube anyhow. Um, so this morning, I decided to go and search the web for information. And Lord and behold, I found I found what you call it. Okay. I found a speech that JD Vance gave over the weekend here in the state of California, which to me was pretty damn interesting because uh, we don't really like him here. But I don't know if you guys know, um, there's pockets of California that are very red, right? I'll turn that around. So I want to read this. I want to read the article that I found that's really important, but I'm only going to read certain sections. So if you want to go and find this article, you can find it on singjupost.com, transcripts, JD Vance's speech at the Claremont Institute. So that's where you can find this. These are key notes from his speech on July 5th of 2025. Um, the problematic things that I found in his speech have a lot to do with immigration. A lot of people said that they didn't believe that he was going to do, this administration wasn't going to do what they're currently doing with immigration. And in my humble opinion, they were very clear as to the things that they wanted to do, but nobody was really paying attention to the fact that this is where it was going. They were too stuck on uh, the whole thing about the price of eggs and the price of gasoline, and they forgot to look and reflect on the real problem, which is Project 2025. And here we are today with people being afraid just to go out in the street based on the color of their skin and who they are. So here we're gonna start with this part that I thought was very problematic. And in the interim of reading this, I'm going to give you a couple of my thoughts on this. So it says here, based on JD Vance's conversation or speech over the weekend, it says the New York Democratic primary, a case study. Now, last week has become sort of a main political story over the last couple of weeks. A 33-year-old communist running insurgent campaign beat a multi-million dollar established machine politically. Hello, good morning. Um, and New York Democratic mayor primary. Now, I don't want to harp too much on the municipal election, but there were two interesting threads that I think came out of Mondami's story that I think are worth us understanding because they're reflective of where the broader American left is at this time. The first is that it drives home just how much voters in each of these prospective parties have changed. If President Trump's victory in 2024 was rooted in a broad working and middle class coalition, Mondami's coalition is almost inverse of that. If you look at the electoral performance precinct by precinct, what you see is left that is completely left behind the broad middle of the United States of America. This is a guy who won high income and educated New Yorkers, especially both young and highly educated New Yorkers. But he was the weakest among Black voters, weakest among those without a college degree. That's an interesting coalition. Maybe it works for the New York Democratic Party primary. I don't think it works particularly well in the United States at large. He didn't particularly well in Bangladesh areas with New York, but he did particularly poorly with Bangladesh Asian immigrants, particularly Chinese Americans. And if you look at the precincts where he did the best, it was New York's gentrifying neighborhoods like Ridgewood and Bushwick, places I haven't heard anything about. But I read about it in the paper. His victory was the product of a lot of young people who live reasonably comfortable lives, but see that their elite degrees aren't really delivering what they expected. And so their own prospects with all that college debt may not, in fact, be greater than those of their parents. And I say not to prioritize them because I think that we should care about all the people in the country, particularly those down to the mobile, college educated people who feel like the American dream is not quite all of that it's cracked up to be. But we have to be honest about where the coalition is. It is not the downtrodden. It is not the poor Americans. It's not the disposition. It's about elite dissatisfaction and elite anger. So for me, when I read this, I see that they don't want us to be educated. They want us to remain uneducated, unable to converse, unable to see new pathways for futures for our own children. So, as a person who did not go to college, right? I did not go to college. I feel like Mundami would be a great asset to the Democratic Party um, because it's a new, fresh view of things. Now, I know that the right likes to tout that it's the elite, the educated that are out there voting for him. But those are our children that you have spent and I have spent thousands and thousands of dollars to get them educated so that they could have a better future. This is not like um, the Nepo babies. These are our children stepping up, doing a better job, having a better future. So I believe that when they try to demonize that it's only the elite, only the highly educated, only the well off, they forget to mention that these are our children that we have helped get there. So there is a lot of middle class parents like myself or lower class parents like my one of my children, one of my daughters is because she's a single parent now, right? And having some struggles. But people forget that there is a lot of us out there voting for the Democratic Party because they bring equality to our children and the ability to obtain higher education, higher learning, right? And at the end of the day, if you want to make a change in this world, then you start with you. You start with your family, you start with your children, and you start with yourself as well, because even at the older ages, I see thousands of older individuals going back to college, going back to get an education, going back to doing better for themselves. And isn't that what life is about? I mean, you don't want to continue in the world of nothingness. Anyhow, so here's another paragraph from his speech that he gave. The hatred that drives the American far left marks its hatred. They hate the people in this room. They hate the president of the United States. And most of all, they hate the people who voted for that president of the United States in this election in November. This is an animating principle of the far left. Now, to be clear, it's it it isn't true of most of the people who voted for Democrats. Most of the people who voted for Democrats, they're good people struggling to get by, even if we think that they are misguided in their political judgment. But pay close attention to the leadership in the movement, says outside the glossy campaign outs, outside of the general election, tested messaging themes. And it's obvious that animates the leadership of the modern Democratic Party. The far left doesn't care about BLM, Black Lives Matters movement, led to a spike in violence and crime in urban Black neighborhoods. And it did, because that same movement also led to the anarchy in the middle class in white neighborhoods. They do not care that Islam hates gays and subjugates women, because for now, it is a useful tool, a death against Americans. And they don't care that too many pharma companies are getting rich from experimental hormonal therapies, because in the process, they're destroying the so called gender binary that has structured social relationships between the sexes for the whole of civilization. And they certainly don't care that deporting low wage immigrants will raise the wages of native borns because they don't mean to create higher living standards for those who are born and raised here, whether they're black, white, or any other skin color. They mean to replace those with people who will listen to their increasingly bizarre ethnic and religious appeals. They are narcissists, and they will make common cause with anyone willing to match the light. And that's why Mondami himself is such an appealing instrument to the far left. He captures so many of the movement apparent contradictions in a single human being, a guy who describes the Palestinians' cause as essential to his identity, yet holds views like abortion and demand and using taxpayer funded money to fund transgender surgeries for minors. Those views, of course, are completely incomprehensive of those on the streets of Gaza. This guy represents the contradiction. How can you believe in the cause of intifada, intifada, while also holding views that are completely smather of people? And the answer is because he is not building a positive program. He is not trying to build prosperity. He's trying to tear something down. And is very effective at articulating all of the things that the far left hates in modern America. So, in my opinion, in reference to this whole thing that he goes on and on and on about Mandami and how the left hates America and whatnot, and how we stand with the individuals um, who are either Muslim or they have different thoughts and views, different religions, different cultures, different it's not about that. It's about accepting everyone for who they are. It's about no judgment for who you are and who you believe in and who you pray to. At the end of the day, those are your views. Just because I don't like your views, it doesn't mean that I should oppress your views. It doesn't mean that I should hold judgment to your views. But when you vote for someone who is going to subjugate somebody else, oppress somebody else, simply to have the things that you believe are right for you and your people, then that's a problem. So, again, it's not that we are against what they're doing, it's that we're against that you want us all to do the same thing you want. No one should be telling somebody else what to do. Get up and do your own things and mind your own business. And that's what it's about. Most of these kids that people say, oh, they're indoctrinating them. No, most of those kids are homeschooled. Stay home, homeschool your children, and leave ours alone. So that's another thing. So here we go into let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about what he says about immigration and the social cohorts. Now, part of the solution, I think that most important part of the solution is first go to stop the bleeding. And that's why President Trump's immigration policies are, I believe, the most important part of the successful first 6 months of the Oval Office. Social bonds from among people who had something in common. They share the same neighborhoods, they share the same church, they send their kids to the same schools. And what we're doing is recognizing that if you stop importing millions of foreigners into the country, you allow that this social cohesion to form naturally. It's hard to become neighbors with your fellow citizens when your own government keeps importing new neighbors every single year at record numbers. Well, in my opinion, most of the people that are being deported in this moment are people that have been here 20 to 30 years. So, how are you telling me that you're importing new people every single year? And now you have new neighbors and new church friends and new people at schools when the reality is that the people who are being held up in all these, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, but all these people that are being held at concentration camps with all of you sit quietly, idly in the comfort of your own homes without blinking twice about what he's doing is insanity to me. I mean, somebody needs to wake up and do something in reference to this, and it's our job not to be complicit. So, again, if you want to read this full speech or listen to it, it's on Singju, SINGJU post.com. And then just add transcripts JD Vance speech at the Claremont Institute. So go listen to it. You can listen to it during lunch on your free time. It's a really interesting speech that he gave, full of hate, division, and just more demonization of people and questioning citizenship. That people who actually fought in the Civil War should be the ones that have any type of citizenship and not us. So there you go. Have a good day.